okay, I'm 35, I've achieved everything I set myself out to, and it doesn't feel good. It feels empty. Fuck it.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this first episode of The Creative Network, a podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative entrepreneurs. Our guest for this first episode is a very special man. His name is John Quilter, but you might know him as the Food Busker. See, as a chef, John achieved most of the things that any chef will dream of, including owning his Michelin star restaurant at the age of 30. But when John realized that this wasn't it for him and that he wasn't happy, he took on another challenge, changed everything, moved to London, and reconnected with his dream of being an actor. In this conversation, John talks to us about the ups and downs of his journey, from kitchen porter to cooking for Kanye West, and tell us everything about starting from scratch at 35 and creating the life he really wanted. We hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as we enjoyed recording it. My name is Florent, and I will be your host for the talk with the Food Busker.
Thanks so much for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm sorry, because of us, you missed the
Don't know what you're
football.
going on about.
Apparently it's not interesting. I kind of want to start with a question about kind of where you're coming from and ask you how you became a chef and what that involved.
Well, I guess it started, so at school I didn't do very well. I'm dyslexic, and so back then when I was at school they didn't really know what dyslexia was, and so I was in all the remedial classes, and I was the bottom of the class, and that pretty much the message that was being sent to me as a kid was that it's not going to work out for you, it's not going to be very good, and so school wasn't brilliant for me. And then I remember my dad having one of those awful dad and son chats where he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be an actor. And he's like, that's a shit idea. You know, it's like, you need to do something.
Typical dad comment.
Yeah. It's like, you need to do something that you can do every day and people are always going to want you to do. And I got a job as a dish pig or a kitchen porter. And so, and I said, well, maybe a chef. And so that's kind of where it started. But what happened when I walked in as a kitchen porter, by the end of the week I was a commie chef, and by the end of the month I was beginning to run that section. And it was because when I walked into the kitchen I just got the dance, the sort of ballet that goes on, and it's because being dyslexic I think in pictures. Mere mortals like you can see 3 to 4 images a second. A dyslexic can see up to 32 images a second. So they see in video. Now I'm in video, that's what I do, I make video. But back then, I didn't know that. I just thought that I was not very clever and not very creative, and this was the only path for me.
Okay. And how did you kind of work your way up? Because I actually don't know how you become a chef, but I thought maybe you go to school to learn it, or how do you go from bottom to working your way up?
So basically I worked in a hotel kitchen, and then I went to the Birmingham College of Food, which was a college, not a university, and I took a sort of BTEC, and part of that learning was learning to cook. But really, I learnt most of my cooking in kitchens. And the way you move up is that you work really hard, you drink alcohol, or that's how it was back then, and you become indispensable to chef.
Yeah. And so can you tell us a bit about going from chef to owning your restaurant? And also, what you said is you didn't necessarily want it to be a chef. It kind of happened that way. Were you enjoying it?
Yeah, it was really interesting because so I somehow passed and got because I got held back at school, and then I went and I somehow managed to pass this BTEC thing, and then I moved to London and took on a role at Pizza Express as a trainee manager. and just bounced around really. And then I opened a restaurant in Manchester for a 200 cover huge restaurant, and I was very ambitious, and so I would say yes to everything and do it. But I didn't know it at the time, but I wasn't really enjoying it. But I was good. I was good at it, right? And it was good to feel good. You know, it's good to be good at something. I wasn't really questioning whether it was smart or whether it was satisfying. I was just so grateful to be good at something. But the problem was, so at 23, opening a 200 cover restaurant and being the general manager felt brilliant. It's like my first taste of some self-esteem and a bit of success. But through my 20s, by the time I got to 29, 30, I'd got a raging drinking problem. I couldn't maintain a relationship. I was just that classic mess. And as I entered into my 30s, I got into recovery. I stopped drinking and started the new phase of my life. And at that time, they say when you get clean and sober, they don't do anything in the first year that's radical. Well, of course, I got into a relationship. I opened a restaurant. I just did everything wrong, and so, and the restaurant did really well. We were in the Michelin Guide, and what was great about the restaurant was that I got to do it my way, 100% my way for the first time. All those times I worked with somebody and they'd be like, "Do it this way," I'd be like, "Okay," you know, and really I was. And so I got to do it my way. I got to satisfy that bratty teenager in a way who thinks he knows everything. And I needed to do that. I can see that now that I needed to do that. But I made another raft of mistakes in that. And so at sort of, oh God, how old was I? I think it was probably about 34.
Okay.
My restaurant was 4 years old. We'd never made a penny, even though we won Best New Restaurant in Manchester. And I was getting on telly, but actually, because I was clean and sober, I kind of woke up to the fact that I'd got everything I'd ever set myself to achieve. I got this house, and I got this, and I got all these other things. And I remember thinking, if I had a bigger car, and I lived in a bigger house, and it was in like Alderley Edge in Manchester where all the footballers live. I was like, I fucking hate Alderley Edge. And I hate all that bullshit, you know, that sort of, I found myself within that community and within that society. And so that's what I held myself up. I think that's so normal. I think we all do that, right? Is that we look in our immediate environment and it's very difficult not to somehow be affected by that. And so at that point in my life, 34, I just realised, you know, I'd sort of had some introduction into sort of, let's say, spiritual principles that were not about status or wealth or accumulation, that it was more about inner peace and that's when the early fosterings of understanding that actually everybody is creative, and that I need to look within for my creativity. Yes, I need to look without, but really creativity comes from within. And it was then beginning to realise, actually, it doesn't matter how much money I earn, how much status I get, how much respect I get from my peers. It's all bullshit if I'm not, like, feeding the river and, like, and doing what I really wanted to do, which is be a fucking actor, right? Yep. And so it was like, at 35, I was just like, shit, I've got to start again.
Was there something that you spoke about, kind of spiritual experience, was there something that triggered this? Was there a specific event, or is it more realization around?
Failure. The gift of failure. Like in this country, more than any other country, we frown on failure. In America, they embrace failure. They say, like, you know, and so I've learned through pain and failure and getting it wrong and not giving up. And so it was failure. It was like to get to 4 years into the restaurant, be in the Michelin Guide, be getting on television, be getting all these things that people were like, mate,
so
killing it.
Success.
Yeah, and inside me just going, this is bullshit. It's not feeding me. I still wake up fearful. You know, that thing, remember that Sunday night feeling? Do you know what I mean? And it's like I had that Sunday night feeling all my life. And it's like, and you know what I mean? That it's that horrible, it starts creeping in about 5 o'clock and you're like, oh, it's not here. and then it was a new realization. You know, I read so many self-help books and so many spiritual things, and it was on so many of these weird books from California from the 70s all the way up to the but they were all saying one thing, is that you can be happy, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm 35, you know, I've achieved everything I set myself out to, and it doesn't feel good. It feels empty. Fuck it. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna conduct an experiment, which is I'm gonna follow this shit in these books that makes me feel really weird, and I can't talk to other people because they're gonna think I'm like a real loser, right? But it was just like, I just didn't have anything to lose, and and so I closed the restaurant. I went bankrupt. I lost my house. I lost everything financial. Signed off a huge amount of debt because I'd used my house to get the lease, and we were not making money, and decided to fall apart. So have a, I can't remember the term, but it's like breakdown, breakthrough. So decided to have a breakdown, basically.
Okay. Shit. That's intense. Did you feel a sense of relief, or at that time it's like?
It's the coolest thing ever that I've ever done. It's like there's that thing. It's like I'm playing this game. The game's rigged against me. I'm never going to win this game. So how do you get out of that? Well, you blow the game up, right? You just go, fuck it. I'm not playing this game anymore. And more and more people are doing that. And London's a really cool place because lots of young people are going, no, this retail thing, blow the game up. Do you know what I mean? It's like this thing with food, blow the game up. And I didn't realise, coming from the Midlands and then being in Manchester, but down here, you've got a whole load of financiers and entrepreneurs that go in, yeah, you want to blow the game up? We call it disruption. Let's. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, wicked. This is good. It's good to blow things up. So
for a bit, and then it starts back. Okay, so at that time, you kind of stop a lot of things, change a lot of things in your life. You were in Manchester at the time. How did you decide to come to London? What are you looking for? Tell us how you navigate that period.
Well, I think the first year was the most difficult year because at this point, I meditate every day, journal, and decided that I wouldn't do anything sensible. You know what I mean? So my dad would be like, this is the sensible thing to do, and it's like, I'm not trying to be sensible. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to realize that there is a path. I believe there's a path for all of us, and that I'm trying to find this path. And so what I decided to, so for the first year, I just completely dropped out. And the one rule was, I am not taking a job. I'm not taking a full-time job. I will go and do other things, but I will not take a full-time job. And so that's what I did. And
were you at the time? Were you thinking?
So I moved in. So I moved out my 4-bedroom house that had got repossessed, and I moved in with one of my friends, and just went full hippie, grew my hair down to here, and just really embraced this falling apart. Because once you get used to the screaming of "What the fuck are you doing?" Once you get past that screaming, there's a quieter voice that's going, "This is what we're doing," and you do, and then you start choosing. I'm not doing this so that I am attractive to women. I'm not doing this thing so I'm respected by my friends. I'm not doing this thing so that my parents. I'm doing it because I fucking love it. I'm going for a walk with my dog because it's fucking awesome. And then when I'm on that walk, some really cool shit starts going down. So I did that for a year, and it was really interesting to see how people reacted. And I lost a bunch of friends who just couldn't cope with it, because I think it was difficult for them to look at their lives with what I was going on. I made a load of friends and created some of the strongest friendships I've ever had, and those guys have been with me through everything, and me with them. And then about a year at the end of that, I just got this calling to come to London. It was just like, right, you need to go to London. And I just thought, what? The most stupid thing to ever say. I haven't got a job, I've got no money in the bank, and I've got to go to London, It was just like, this is ridiculous. But I said, well, I want to conduct an experiment, because I want to be able to, in a year or so ago, going, that's a load of rubbish. That stuff in those books, it's rubbish. Don't listen to it. I needed to know that, right? Because I'd done it the other way, and that hadn't worked. So, yeah.
At the time, are you thinking, I am never going to do something with food anymore?
Yeah, totally. The plan was, I remember closing the restaurant, and then for a couple of weeks walking around going, I'm going to move to LA, and I'm going to surf, and I'm going to become an actor. And I walked around town for 2 weeks saying that. And then 2 weeks, the restaurant was closed, and I was just like, what the fuck have you done? It was just like, that's ridiculous. But I made I'm never going to cook again. I'm never going to serve another customer. I want to become an actor. And so I set myself the task. I did a 1-week course at the Poor School in King's Cross, and I said, if they offer me the 2-year course, I'll do it. If not, then I'll pursue this kind of celebrity chef thing that had been like knocking on my door. Did the course, didn't get it offered, decided to come up with something around food, but that wasn't a restaurant.
Okay. So at the time, I imagine money is not necessarily huge.
No.
You're in London, and you have a vision, though. How do you find the concept? How do you find your flow with this new vision?
Well, because I'd sort of developed listening to my sort of internal guidance, and elevated that to a place of importance. So I think that I think more and more of us are trying to plug into that space. But I think the mistake we made is we go, oh no, that's not the sensible move. And what I decided is, no, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to fucking go for it. So, and what part of that was, well, are you going to enjoy it? Does it make your heart sing? And like a key book that helped me through this whole process is a book called The Artist's Way, which was written by Julia Cameron, who is the film director's wife, and she actually wrote it here in Notting Hill. And she used to take it round the NA fellowship and give it out to people. And so I found this book, and it's about creative recovery, and it's a very useful tool. And so there was a lot of principles in there that I was following. And so I got invited to do demonstrations down at the down on the South Bank, and I just bored the shit out of me. It's like, demonstrations? Is that what my life has come to? Do you know what I mean? It didn't feel innovative. It didn't feel sexy. It didn't feel like I'm changing the game here. It feels like I've...
Going back to...
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
So I just was like, look, and they weren't going to pay me enough money. So I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't I cook what I want to cook? And, but... Rather, I was like, just came up with it in the spot. I was like, but I'll cook the food and I'll get people to pay me, but I'll get them to pay me what they think the food is worth. And they were like, oh yeah. And I was like, we'll call it Food Busking. And that was it. And then that was it. I started and didn't realise what I'd started, and went from there.
Incredible. Where did you have a connection with music at the time? Because busking is normally more an artist thing, or did you get this inspiration from somewhere else? Or?
I think for me, when I was growing up, the rave scene, the hip hop scene, and the rave scene, so house music, and we used to travel up from Wolverhampton to the Hacienda, and you know, it's like there's a talent drain to London, right? But this was the first time that a city outside of London was more important than London. It was so cool. And it was like, and Manchester was just so fuck you, London. It was great, right? And it was all these people swaggering around with long hair and big like, and it was just the attitude was so bold, and the music from that time, and so I've always been trying to recreate the feeling I had on the stage at the Hacienda when I was like 17, on drugs, and so, but it was that attitude, and it was that feeling, and it was house music, and it was hip hop, and it was very much, which is so cool today, because now you look at Vice, and you look at Now We Feast, and these are East Coast and West Coast based production companies that are heavily informed by hip hop, and for me, I was desperate to have some of that hip hop, some of that attitude, some of that street, because food at that for the last 20 years has been so just middle class, elitist, white, and it's just so fucking frustrating, and it's elitist, and I hate, you know, I've got a real problem with elitist structures, because I guess when I was a kid, elitist structures were telling me that I wasn't going to make it in anything.
Okay, and how? So I heard, I don't know if that's true. I've heard that then you went on to cook for artists, and that you cooked for Kanye West and Beyonce.
No, what happened was, so
I saw this online.
So
and I was
what
like,
happened?
shit.
So what happened is that food busking was beginning to happen, and these two talent girls spotted me doing something, and one of them was married to the director of Universal Music, the digital side, and we hit off, become firm friends. We're actually just beginning to do something again, and I was like, wouldn't it be great to like cook backstage at music festivals? So you've got that music attitude, and they were like, right, boom, we can make it happen. Let's go to the Big Chill. Kanye West was fucking headlining, and they happened to know one of his key guys, who then became like his creative director. Just this like great kid from London, and it just happened, and suddenly I was just like going from like, you know, you can just imagine like the times of feeling like you used to have a house, you used to have a restaurant, and now you're the biggest loser on the planet. Do you know what I mean? Just like this, what have you done? And then I'm going to cook for Kanye West. It was like, dun, dun, dun. Do you know what I mean? Just like, you know, you can just imagine my Facebook status. You know what I mean? Yeah, get that, motherfuckers.
What year was that?
Oh, God, that was... it was the last year the Big Chill happened. So I think it was like 2014, 2015.
So was that Yeezus Kanye West or My Beautiful Dark Fantasy? I'm just trying to like... Because Kanye West, different time, completely different person, right?
It was the beginning of the breakdown.
Okay. What did you cook for him? What recipe? So you're starting to find your flow. You're starting to find, and you're enjoying it. How does that work at that time? I feel like probably a lot of people can relate with, you know, the first part of what you talked about. We go through things. Sometimes we do something and we think it's going to be what we want. We're going to be successful doing it, and then we realize we don't like it, and we go through those phases. But then, how do you spot the time where that's it? I'm on the right track and I'm feeling that energy.
It's interesting because I think, you know, essentially, we're talking about manifesting your life, manifesting your art, manifesting what you want to do, and it's such a struggle for so many of us to believe that you can create your own life, create what you really want. When you finally get to the point where you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to have a go, you're in a new phase. But then that's really challenging as well, because you can't give up. And I guess there's three things that I've really learned and stick to. And the first one is that you have to become open-minded, which means, because essentially this is a closed operating system, and so you just have the same thoughts that go around all the time telling you, no, you're shit, you can't do that, you're rubbish. And then it's like, so you have to become open-minded, which means that your plan has to be opened up to other people, right? And it also means that you have to, if you're open-minded, you have to try things that you wouldn't have tried in the closed system. So you open the system up, And the next thing you've got to do is you've got to become willing. So so it's like, oh, I'm going to go to this event tonight. I don't want to do that. And it's like, no, you've got, you've got to, you've just got to. And if it feels uncomfortable, great, you're definitely on the right track. And then the third thing is, and which is the thing that answers your question, I hope, is that you can't give up. And so when do I get to that point where this is it? I do that all the time, but I think that actually the thing is to recognise that it's never going to be it. I wanted to be an actor. I didn't want to set up a coffee business. I didn't really want to do this food thing. I wanted to be like, Tom Cruise, right? And it's like...
You're my Tom Cruise.
But it's like... So I think that you have to do your thing, and then you have to put it out there, and then you've got to be open-minded about what comes back. I see so many people saying, this is what I want to be. And yes, you need that, but I also think you've got to allow for feedback and flexibility.
And kind of let things come to you almost.
Yes.
And I love this about your story, because I feel you've done something, you mastered it, right? Becoming a chef, owning your restaurant, you're good at it, but you didn't quite enjoy it, or didn't enjoy it at all. You wanted to do something else. And you kind of used one thing to get to the other thing, because today you're an actor. You're in front of the camera a lot of the time. How did you go from... So at that time, you're starting being hot. Like, you've cooked for Kanye West. You're doing your thing. How do you go from that to doing video? What's the connection? And
well, I guess where did it happen? I guess the key, the big break that happened was that it got a full page spread in the Evening Standard, and then Jamie Oliver noticed it. And Jamie was, he's had a production company for God knows how many years, 15, 20 years, and they were all looking to get into digital. And London Live was launching, the new TV channel owned by the Evening Standard. And Jamie's production company was going to make sort of digital budgeted content for them, and they were looking for new talent, more street styly, a bit more edge. And so they saw me and they invited me to do it, and I got to be one of the main talent on 2 series of that. And he was launching FoodTube, because YouTube had gone out and said, right, we'll give $1 million out to, we got 20 million, I think it was 100 million to give out to a load of people. So Jay-Z went up, Jamie Oliver went up, all these people went up. He got $1 million from Google over, I think he got like 4 million over 4 years or something like that. Anyway, and that was my big break, and that was the thing that made it go like this. And yeah, so video was just, that was it. It's like TV's so hard to get into.
Yeah.
Whereas video, you can do it yourself.
And then you became a regular on FoodTube, right? So you're kind of hosting, because my understanding of FoodTube is that it's like a platform for upcoming chef or people with a new concept.
Yeah. It's changed now. It's now been moved into Jamie Oliver. But for the first 4 years, there was 4 or 5 founding chefs, of which I was one, and it was Jamie's digital TV station. And so, I got to do things like, I got to co-present a live show with Jamie that went global for Food Revolution Day, which was just like class. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I grew up with Jamie. Jamie's was the first guy that started going, oh, this is all boring, let's do something different. And I think, and so we got, and what was really interesting is, because you see, Jamie partnered with the producer that did The Big Breakfast. Do you remember The Big Breakfast all those years ago? And so The Big Breakfast was Chris Evans and Gabby Roslin, and there's this bit of a mafia. And The Big Breakfast was shot in the 90s, and it was this live English telly that was really vibrant. And then then Jamie set a production company up with Zoe that was one of the main producers, and then they built this huge media empire. And then when digital kicked off 5 or 6 years ago, they were like, oh, this is like that time again. And they brought in their batch of presenters, and I was lucky enough to be one of those.
And that was a big boost.
That's where it all changed.
This was in 2013?
So this was 4 years ago.
Okay. So you start on FoodTube with the Food Busker concept.
We didn't. What basically happened is that they said, look, you need to fit into a vertical. You need to fit into a kind of like character. You cook on the street, so why don't you do street food? And I was like, fine. You know, but if they'd have said do donuts, I'd have gone fine. So you know, and to be really honest, 90% of the food that I cooked on the channel for the first 2 years, I'd never cooked before in my life. But if you watch it, you look like I cooked it every day. Do you know what I mean? Because I was just blagging it, you know, because I wanted it so badly. And we tried, and they were going to cancel me. They were going to. It wasn't working. I was cooking on this. On Colin's balcony. Colin's my business partner in the coffee business. So I was he got this lovely place in Notting Hill. It was dead nice. So I was like, oh, that's it. I'll go on there and cook up on there. And it just wasn't working. People weren't getting it. And then they flipped my video director guy. And he said, look, why don't you go back to your roots and cook on the street and people come and try it. Boom. And then and now it's a you know, it's a channel that pays for itself. And you know, now I've done 3 series in Canada with The Guardian, making over 30 films. We won silver in the Global Content Awards for my film that was in Toronto. I just got back from Austin doing something for Unilad, and I should be off to California in September to shoot a series there. You know, it's ticking all the boxes.
Can we give a round of applause for that?
Nice one.
And I really want to talk about Food Busker now, your business model. Like, I think it's super interesting for the people in the audience, how you manage to monetize it and take it where it is, start it from scratch. I just wanted to ask a question, but I can't remember. Oh yeah, I know. What's the difference when you cook in the street? What's different from cooking in the street, right by people, and cooking in the studio or something? What does that change?
It's a good question, actually. To be honest, it's changed. I think when I first cooked on the street and then first cooked for the camera, very, very similar. Now, then I went through a phase where we were shooting a digital video for YouTube is a little bit like cut and paste. It's like, we're going to put this bit here and this bit there and bit there. And food telly, you might have 4 or 5 cameramen, and you just cook through the whole recipe, and someone's getting the small shots, someone's getting the wides. With YouTube and when we first did it, it's 1 cameraman. And so and we try and shoot 5 recipes in a day because the cost constraints are really vicious. And so so it became more formulaic, where it would be like, right, do the introduction, you know, and then you do it all this. I'm now going through this big change where at the beginning of the year I decided to go full-time on the channel, because I built that YouTube channel while I was building this coffee business. And so I've learnt to shoot and edit this year. And now I'm beginning to become a proper filmmaker, where I'm creating, I'm doing my first ever sort of documentary series at the moment. It's around bacon. The Guardian put an article out at the beginning of the year or something saying that bacon causes cancer because industrially produced bacon uses nitrates. Nitrates, when they're cooked and added to meat, have now been added into a batch of like 120 foodstuffs that are carcinogenic. And like when I read that, I was like, what? I can't eat bacon anymore. Bacon's like air to me. And so
and there is a scene in that video. For those who haven't seen it, you need to watch it. But there is a scene when you go on about all the kind of recipes with bacon, all the stuff with bacon. That made me think about Forrest Gump, when Booba goes on about shrimp. And I thought, was that conscious or?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I guess I'm a bit like Forrest Gump.
Sorry. So
it just insulted me there, didn't it? Yeah, but what's mega about this for me is that, so this is something that I've shot and edited myself. I literally taught myself. I've gone on 4 classes, but I taught myself how to shoot and edit. I started making this series, and the series is specifically to grow audience and grow subscribers. But in the process, when you commit to making a story, is the story becomes like a business. The story becomes a character. You don't want to be rigid. You want to listen to what you're being told by your creation, if you like. And so what I decided to do was to say, right, I'm going to show you, first episode, bacon causes cancer. Complete clickbait, tick. Plug into a major media channel, The Guardian, tick. You know, it's drama on YouTube, tick. So I'm thinking commercially, but I'm also thinking creatively. And then I thought, well, what would be the cool thing to do? And it'd be like, right, I'm going to make bacon, episode 2. And then, but what I'm also going to do is like, would you like bacon? Would you like some of this nitrate-free bacon? And in the space of 2 weeks, I've created another business because 700 people have come over to my website and gone, yes. So 700 times £10, times 2 packs of bacon. Anyway, it's something like £7,000 worth of turnover. So now I'm like, right, I'm going to create this business called Old School Nitrate-Free Letterbox Bacon, and you're going to have a bacon subscription. And
it's a long name.
Yeah, but what's happened is that now I'm learning to interact with the audience, and YouTube gives you that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it makes it more alive, and people witness what's happening.
Yeah, it's
bonkers.
It is bonkers the way that. But it's like in the back of my mind, just like Food Busker, just with this sort of bacon thing that's happening, I had a mind's eye of what could happen. You know, the mind's eye is that I'm going to do some good. I'm going to create nitrate-free bacon that's old school from good pigs, and tick all the boxes there. I'm going to take it to Google and put pressure on the executive chef to take the bacon, because you really should take this, shouldn't you, chef? Tick. And then I'll be going to Tesco's or whoever, and so I've got the big picture. I've got the idea, right? But I'm not attached to that outcome, because it may just completely, 5 people could have gone, yeah, I want bacon. And I'd be like, oh, bollocks. But do you know what I mean? It's like running 2 strategies at exactly the same time. I think, there's that great comment about entrepreneurs where it's like you jump off the building and you build the plane on the way down. And that's what it is about that.
And I love the creativity about your channel, just in general. I mean, that example is a perfect example. But I remember a video where you teach people how to cook chicken with an iron, and also in the bacon one, you show people how to smoke the bacon in
filing cabinet,
which is amazing. Where do you get this inspiration to do things which are completely out of?
Google.
Did you Google how to cook chicken with an iron? Do people Google?
Well, that was the producer at the time that suggested that, and I was like, the chef in me goes, that's ridiculous, and then the YouTuber goes, that's clickbait. Let's do that. Let's do it. So and it works a treat actually, using an iron. You cling film, not cling film. Don't use cling film. Tin foil, and then essentially, the commercial person in me is looking at the YouTube channel and it's like, I want more views and I want more subscribers. Right, so I want to barbecue something. So you do a bit of research. So, you've got to have that commercial. You haven't got to. You can be a 100% clear artist, right? Or you can be 100% bean counter commercial person. I choose to bring both of those things because it's what both of those things I learn, right? It's like, I don't think that there's any experience in your life is wasted. If you worked in this job, that is really valuable. It is, and I believe that. So that's my approach. I'm looking at the commercial, then I'm looking at the creative, and they meet in the middle and they fight.
Just because I'm conscious of the time, and I want to make sure we have at least 5 minutes for Q&A. What's your business model today? Can you talk to us about revenue streams, and without necessarily going into too much details, but like, how do you sustain yourself?
Sure. So the YouTube business model is that I think this is right, but it's like 1 million views equals £1,000. roughly. So it's pretty shit, really, because, you know, it's like, you know, you're not going to make much of that until you really get up there, you know. So I earn money from views, and then the main way that I make money is with commercial deals. So that will be I feature. So let's say Jameson's comes along and says, "Can you use Jameson's in your brand?" Now, because I'm a chef and I work with products, it makes sense. I have to draw a line in the sand with who I work with.
Yeah.
And it's a real battle. You know, it's interesting, but I came here from Iceland, right? Now, I don't know what your perception is of Iceland. My perception of Iceland was, it's shit. I don't want to get anywhere near it, right? But, well, then I found out that the executive chef came from Waitrose, and he's the guy that's responsible for the Heston range, the Dutchy range, and another key range. The most important innovative ranges in retail over the last 10 years. He's gone there and he's radically changing everything. And so I'm like, right, I can work with you guys on particular things and innovative. But it's very difficult working with brands because some of them get it, others want you to go, oh, here, I'm using Dulux toilet tissue, isn't it amazing? And I can't do that because my people will just be like, this is shit. And so, do you know what I mean? And
you're almost like an artist where, you know, if you need to cater to your crowd.
Yes,
and
very much so. It's got to be authentic. The key is authenticity, 100%. So I would use Jameson's. I would use, you know, certain food products. I would go to Canada to find out about salmon. All that works. But there are lots of challenges within that revenue model.
Cool.
And another one to use is Patreon, where you can go, you heard about Patreon? Yeah, Patreon works.
This is it, guys. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation, and we hope you enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we had to cut the Q&A with John at the end because the microphone let us down on the day of the recording. By the way, this podcast was recorded during one of our quarterly events called the Creative Network. Those events happen in London, all straight at a place called Boondocks. We're bringing together creatives and entrepreneurs around a really cool night with art exhibition, live music, and a talk like this one. So if you guys want to get involved in the next one, just follow us on our Instagram at Creative Jungl without the E at the end. So at Creative Jungl without the E at the end. Follow us and let us know what you think. Hope to see you guys soon, and take care. Bye bye.